Hello there, this is Dr. Welty. This is the first video in a series that explains some absolute fundamentals of music notation. This first video, we're going to be starting off with clefs and staves. On the screen here, I have a musical staff. As you can see, it consists of 5 lines and 4 spaces that are in between them. And a musical staff is how we're going to represent. We're going to put notes on the staff, as I'm sure you've seen, and they're going to represent a certain pitch depending on which line or within which space they are. So if I did that, it would look something like this. So if I have a note, and if I were to put it there in the space, this note would be in the space. And if I were to put it on the line, the note would be on the line. There's no other space in between. It's either going to be on the line or in the space. That's pretty rudimentary. That's pretty simple. So what I want to ask now is, if we looked at this note, would we be able to tell what pitch its position represents? And the answer is technically no, because we don't have a point of reference. Now, if you're used to reading a certain clef, you might be, oh, that's a G, or oh, that's a B. But being a stickler here, right, there's no clef. That's because the clef serves a very important purpose. The clef actually tells us what the names of the lines and spaces will be. So if I move, let's move this note over. And it's on the same line still. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw one of our staves. So yeah, I'll do it like that. So you may have encountered this one already, the good old treble clef. I'm going to do my best to draw with my fingers here. Yeah, this is our treble clef. I'm sure you've seen it before. I'm sure you're familiar. But what does the treble clef actually do for us? Well, the quick answer is that it tends to represent higher pitches compared to something else. You think about treble in terms of equalization. If at any point you have difficulty remembering this, think about a stereo, and if you're turning up the treble, you're turning up the high frequencies. That's how treble clef is working. But if no one's ever told you, or you've never encountered this, does the treble clef look like a certain letter? Well, looking here, see on the inside, I'll use this pointer. See on the inside over here, if I were to draw that somewhere else, you see it's G. Simple as that. It's G. So to erase this guy, oh, I've done the wrong thing. So it's a G. No problem. So the significance of that is that the treble clef is telling us when it's present like this, that second line, counting from the bottom, that any note on that line is a G. So this pitch right here, it's a G. Now, that also situates the other notes around it, because on the staff, going up, we're going forward in our musical alphabet. That goes A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And we're going down, then we're going backwards through that same cycle of letters. So if you think about this G being here, if I were to click on this and move it down here, well then, what pitch would that be? It would be the letter that is before G in the alphabet, because now it's down below that. It's an F. And if I were to move it down, instead of changing its shape, move it down here, well, remember that this line was G, this was F, therefore this one is E. That's how that system is working. Now, what if we went up? This is the space that was above G, right? it's an A because it goes back to the beginning of our musical alphabet, and so on to then go on to B, and then C, and then D, E, etc. I'll put this right back here on G. So if you're new at reading music notation, there are some quick ways that can help you memorize the letters of the staff. And so let me see here. I'll start here. I have an E, and I'm going to place it there on that line there. And then not an E, but a G, and I'll place it there. Can you guess what the next one is if you're following along with me? Well, the space was an A, so the next one will be a B. Can you guess what the next one will be? It's not a B, it's a D. Yep. And then near the top here, oops, finger slipped. It's not a D, it's an F. Now, one easy way to remember this, and get this guy out of the way, is to recall that the lines here, maybe you've heard this before, I do it in a way that's slightly different. The lines themselves can stand for every grizzly bear devours fries. That's how I like to do it. Maybe you've heard another saying. I have too. I like this one better. I think it's more interesting. Anyway, that's a way to memorize the lines. Now, here is an easy way to remember the spaces, because you can gather that the spaces would be they spell the word face. That's another way to memorize it, that the spaces in between stand for those things. Now, we could continue to expand our staff going up or down by adding additional little lines called ledger lines. I'll probably discuss that more in another video, but that's the way that we're going to think about treble clef. Now, if I zoom out, I also have down here, I have another staff. And down here, I'm going to put a different clef altogether for us to see. I should scroll this. Let me replace that treble clef. Okay. And then down here is our new clef. I hope that we can clearly see these two dots here. Now, if we think about the treble clef as being a stylized G, what is the stylized letter that is the bass clef? Hint, 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 it's right there. It's an F. This is telling us that this line right here is an F. So we have a quick way of knowing the names of the lines and spaces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this and bring it down here. And one of the tools we can use is to be thinking about these letters this way. Now, I'm skipping some steps here just for the sake of brevity. If we know this line is F, we can count down, and this one at the bottom will be G. And I'll move this one up here. And I'll move this one up here. See the pattern? See the pattern emerging where we're skipping a letter because it's a skip over a space. Pretty obvious, pretty easy. F. Then an A. I really enjoy the good burritos. Don't fall apart. Alternatively, there's also all cows eat grass, or at least they would be a lot happier if they did. Right? I'm gonna write this one down here too. All cows eat grass. And so if we put a note on one of those lines or those spaces, that represents one of those pitches. And that would be true if we have vertical or horizontally aligned notes. Anyway, before I go, I'll say something really quick. There is another clef in popular usage called a C clef. And if I were to, let me see here. Let's pretend I have another clef, another staff down here. And I'm going to draw another clef. These two aren't related any longer. I'm just thinking about this one right now. So if I'm down here, there's another clef. And while both the treble clef and the bass clef can be moved, right? Because you could think about how the curly part of the G is on that second line and how the dots are on this second line from the top, right? And that represents the letter. You could technically move those, right? You could have the dots around this line and then that would be the F. That's uncommon. That's unusual. But there is a clef that has more mobility, so to speak, in the practice, and that is the C clef. And a lot of people say this when they first see the C clef. Doesn't look like a C. Well, yeah, you have to trust me. So if I draw a line like this and then whoop, whoop, there it is. I did the best I could to line up this whoop, whoop on the middle line. Let me try it again. I'll try it. Okay, it's a little tricky. I'm left-handed, so okay. So this is a C clef, and I know what you're thinking. That this probably looks like a B. It represents the note C there, and technically, going a step further, is something we haven't talked about in this video series yet, but that is middle C, which is something. Well, I'll revisit that in a second. Middle C is this one, and this thing is movable. So if I were to select this, I can move this to other lines. This is a C clef here. Some people call this this positioning of the C clef alto clef, right? And there are some people who use this one. I use this one sometimes. This is the tenor clef right here. And technically, you could put the darn thing anywhere you wanted to. And yeah, the reason alto and tenor clef have their own names is because they're popular in their usage, but uncommon. Immediately, viola is the instrument in the orchestra that plays virtually, most commonly alto clef, and they'll stretch out sometimes to a treble clef notation. But other instruments, I hope I named them all. I've encountered bassoon literature, trombone, double bass, things that read the tenor clef here. I'm sure I've left someone out. So yeah, anyway, even sometimes cello writes in tenor clef before it goes to treble clef. Now, not to be too confusing here, not to be too squirrely, but remember I said that this middle line was middle C. Well, yeah. So if I go back up here, how does that middle C thing play out with these two staves? Now I'm gonna do another thing. Part of this, I'm gonna link these two, so to speak. going to link these two by drawing a brace on them. Now, this is common in notation and piano literature. The brace is showing us that they are to be read at the same time. They're linked and they're connected. And a lot of notation software does this for you, but you should still be aware that it exists. And so what happens is, I'm going to draw this as neatly as I can. It's a line that goes down the back, and then whoop, whoop. Wait a minute. The way I've drawn this, does this look like it might be indicating something to us? Well, I've drawn it the best way I could. It looks like this one, doesn't it? A little bit. This is a way for us to remember that middle C is positioned between these staves, but it's going to look a little different in each staff. This will be the last thing I have to say about staves and clefs today. So if I were to draw middle C in treble clef, I would have to draw a ledger line below. This is an extension of the staff down by one. And if I drag in my note, here's my note. Let me make this note a little smaller. There, okay. Bring to front. Got the Z index right. Okay. So now this is how it would look. We have the note that's on this ledger line. And if you were to count down, you'd have E, this space between this ledger line and the bottom line is a D, and then we're at a C. That's middle C. On the keyboard, on the grand staff, that's middle C. Now, it's going to get a little weird. Get ready. It's going to let me do both. If I were to put this down here, and I'm going to draw another line. I'll do it here. And bring to front. Okay. So I've attempted to do the same thing in the drawing. That's also middle C, now in the bass clef. But those are the same notes. If I make a duplicate, those are the same notes. It's the same key on the keyboard, and it's the same pitch. It's just that they're written this way. Some folks who are new to this expect it to look as if it was like smack dab in the middle. And I don't blame you, but this is actually what it is. Anyway, so if you were to keep going up with more ledger lines in bass clef, which you could, you would be in this pitch territory. But it would be as if you're suggesting on whatever instrument's reading this to keep going up in pitch into this high register. If it's piano literature and we have the brace here indicating one instrument's playing this, you would play this with your left hand because bass clef, bottom staff, left hand on the keyboard. So I hope that makes some sense. This video turned out much longer than I ever anticipated it would be, but I hope that this was informative or a decent review for some folks who may be unfamiliar. Please email me if you have any questions or leave a comment on my YouTube channel. And thank you for watching. And I'll see you around.